です。今回は今アメリカの国内線のエアラインで働いているジャスティンに質問をいろいろしていきたいと思います。Justin, can you introduce yourself? Can you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin and I currently work for a regional airline here in the United States. I was born and raised here in the US and I'm currently 24 years old.
Where did you go to school for training, pilot training?
So I actually went to the University of North Dakota and I did all of my flight training up at UND. Go soon.
Would you recommend UND?
Absolutely.
For pilot training?
It's a really good program. A really big fleet of aircraft. They have about 120 airplanes in their fleet total. So lots of airplanes on property. All the instructors there are tremendous amount of experience in the industry, whether that's ex-military pilots, ex-airline pilots, current airline pilots. So getting that well-rounded type of instruction from the faculty was really amazing.
What was your airline pilot training like for you? Was it hard?
It was challenging for sure. So at my company, the training footprint was about 2 months long, where so we were in ground school for about a month and a half, and then we had simulator training for about 2 weeks. Going back to the last question, I really think that the university helped prepare me for this airline training, and it was a really good kind of lead into what I was to expect at the airline training. So though it was challenging, I had a lot of good foundations to build upon to guide me through that training itself.
普通はですね、日本の訓練ってもっと長いんですよね。1年ぐらいかかるんですけど、アメリカの訓練もたった2ヶ月ぐらい、2、3ヶ月、2ヶ月ちょっとぐらいで終わっちゃうんですよね。What makes a really good crew?
I think the number one thing that really sets apart a really great crew versus one that's not so much is first and foremost communication. Whenever you're working in an airline industry or in an airline setting, communication is absolutely paramount. So obviously, as a flight instructor, being able to communicate with other pilots is important, but for us, more than the communication inside the cockpit, the communication outside the cockpit. So we're talking about communication with our flight attendants, communication with our passengers. And in terms of the crew, as long as all of us are on the same page, that makes for a really well working crew overall. Obviously a crew that's able to have fun, especially when it comes to layovers and just bringing out a really fun environment during a trip is really important as well, because a good crew can make or break a trip. So, having a really fun and energetic crew is always a plus.
楽しいフライトになるということです。Okay, what are some tips to succeed airline pilot training?
Obviously, you need to study. So having a really good work ethic and being able to study a lot is important. But as I said earlier, you need a certain amount of teamwork when it comes to the training even. It's really interesting because when you're going through your training to get like a private pilot certificate or a commercial pilot certificate, you often study by yourself, right? Or if anything, with a flight instructor. But when it comes to airline pilot training, having a group to study with, having other trainees with you, being able to find a group and work together as a group really improves the overall training experience. Because having your peers to kind of bounce ideas back and forth between and to figure out things that you might not really fully understand, having that be your peers is really important. And I think finally, maintaining the motivation, knowing that at the end of the airline pilot training, you will become an airline pilot and you will be able to fly commercial airliners around. So always reminding yourself, no matter how hard the training becomes, that will be the end goal and that you will eventually be able to accomplish that by having those things in mind. I think is really important for training.
なのでやっぱモチベーションはどこでも大切なんですね。でやっぱりチームワークが助け合いが鍵みたいですね。Do the pilots get a lot of attentions from the ladies?
Honestly, to a certain extent, yes. To a certain extent, maybe a little bit, but it's nothing crazy, honestly. But a little bit.
だそうです。やっぱりちょっとはモテるみたいですね。 はい。Next questions. What's your career progression?
So career progression for me would look something like upgrading a captain at my current airline. So becoming a regional airline captain, and then gaining pilot command experience and flight time, and then eventually get hired on by the major airlines. So whether that's major commercial passenger airliners or cargo, a lot of people like to move on to the majors. So these are big companies like you've heard of, like United, Delta, American, those type of companies. And then from there again, once you join those big companies, then you be given again as a first officer. And then after a few years, then you might be able to upgrade up to captain. So ultimately, the end goal for me is to become an international airline captain and fly across the ocean as captain.
Wow. What was the hardest flight for you?
So in general, for me, the shorter flights are a little bit more tough, just because you have to do so many things in a really short amount of time. One of the shortest flights we have is only 60 miles long, from takeoff to touchdown, only 60 miles long. And so in a jet, like I fly, that takes about 15-ish minutes total. So in a span of 15 minutes, we have to do all of our pre-flight items, and once we take off, we have to do our after takeoff checklist, our cruise checklist. Then we got to think about the approach. We have to plan for the approach. We have to actually talk about the approach, brief the approach, do an approach checklist, before landing checklist, and then actually fly the plane, mulching all of that, and talk to air traffic control. So you can see how with the shorter flight, you have a lot more things that you have to cram into a short amount of time. Obviously, longer flights, they are a little bit more tiring physically just because it is longer, right? But you have a lot more time to think about what's coming up next and space out those tasks that you need to do. So, it's kind of both and both, right? Because the shorter flights are easier, like on your body, because they're done so quick, but you have a lot more stuff to do. Whereas a longer flight, hard on the body because it's so long, you can space out those tasks a lot more, so you can do them a little bit more relaxed.
俺は長いフライトの方が好きですね。短いフライトだとやっぱ同じところを何度もその一日に何度もこう行ったり来たりするんですよね。それがなんかやっぱりちょっと自分的にはきついですね。逆に一回出てって長いフライトで帰ってくるとやっぱり気持ち的に楽ですね、自分は。Is there anything you want to say to the people who want to become a pilot?
So for those of you who are thinking about a career in commercial aviation, one thing I want to say is right now times are tough, and it is a little bit of weird timing here in the airline industry, but things will get better, and once it improves, this is the industry to be in. The amount of growth, just the amazing experiences that you'll have by becoming an airline pilot are just, it's amazing. So if you have this kind of dream to become an airline pilot, please keep following it, follow those dreams, and they will come true. They did for me, so.
いいこと言ってくれました。はい、今日はありがとうございました。Thank you, Justin. OK ではまた次のビデオでお会いしたいと思います。
Please hit the like button and subscribe to his channel.
Yeah.
Keep flying.
Alright, keep flying. See you.
See you guys.